Have you ever wondered what it would be like to go without electricity for 72 hours? I did, and I decided to take on this challenge. The thought was as daunting as it was exciting. I mean, electricity is the lifeblood of our modern existence. It powers everything from our refrigerators to our smartphones. But what happens when it's gone? What happens when we're plunged back into a world where we have to fend for ourselves without the help of modern conveniences? I was curious, but along with curiosity came a sense of apprehension. We're so used to our comforts, aren't we? The simple act of flipping a switch to banish the darkness, the ability to heat a meal in minutes, the assurance of communication at our fingertips, all powered by electricity, and here I was, about to willingly give it all up for 3 days. But this wasn't a decision made lightly. I knew that to successfully navigate this challenge, I would have to prepare. Preparation, after all, is key in any survival situation. I would need to think about food, water, heat, light, all the necessities that electricity usually provides with ease. And I would need to anticipate the obstacles that could arise during these 72 hours. It was clear to me that this was not just about surviving without electricity. This was about understanding our own dependencies, about testing our resilience, about learning to adapt. It was about realizing how much we take for granted in our daily lives, and how we can learn to appreciate these conveniences more deeply by experiencing life without them. This was a personal journey, a journey of discovery, of learning, of growth. It was a journey into a world without electricity, into a world that many of our ancestors knew intimately. It was a journey that promised to challenge me, to test me, and ultimately, to teach me. So there I was, ready to embark on a journey of learning, adapting, and surviving without the one thing we often take for granted: electricity. Preparation is key in any situation, and this was no exception. As I prepared to live without electricity for 72 hours, I had to consider the necessities. Water, food, light, and heat were at the top of my list. It's easy to underestimate just how much we depend on electricity for these basic needs until we're about to lose access to it. I started with water. Not only is it essential for drinking, but also for cooking and sanitation. I filled every container I could find, knowing that once the power went out, so would my access to clean running water. Next, food. I stocked up on non-perishable items, those that wouldn't spoil without refrigeration. I also planned meals that could be cooked over a fire or on a portable stove. This wasn't just about survival, it was about maintaining a sense of normalcy, of comfort, in an uncomfortable situation. Lighting was another major consideration. I gathered candles, flashlights, and lanterns, and made sure I had plenty of batteries and matches on hand. I knew that once the sun set, these would be my only sources of light. Finally, I thought about heat. Without electricity, my home's heating system would be useless. I gathered blankets, warm clothing, and even considered ways to insulate my home to retain as much warmth as possible. But preparation isn't just about gathering supplies, it's about anticipating challenges and planning for different scenarios. I had to think about what I would do if the power outage lasted more than 72 hours, or if an unexpected situation arose. I had to mentally prepare myself for the isolation, the quiet, and the inevitable frustration of living without modern conveniences. As I looked at my supplies, I realized this was going to be a test of my resourcefulness and adaptability. I was about to discover just how reliant I was on electricity and just how capable I was without it. The next 3 days were going to be an education, and I was ready for the lesson. The first day was all about adjusting to a new normal. Suddenly, things that I took for granted, like flipping a switch for light or opening the fridge for a snack, were no longer an option. But it wasn't just about the big things, it was also about the small, seemingly insignificant parts of my routine that were suddenly thrown into disarray. Cooking meals became a whole new ballgame. Without electricity, I had to rely on a portable stove and fire. This meant planning meals more carefully and factoring in the time it took to get the fire going. Food preservation became a priority too. Without a refrigerator, I had to get creative. I had to use perishable items first and find ways to keep the remaining food cool and safe to eat. But it wasn't all about survival. Life isn't just about eating and drinking, right? Entertainment and communication were just as crucial. Without digital devices, I had to find alternative ways to keep myself entertained and stay in touch with the outside world. Reading by candlelight became a favorite pastime, and a simple radio became my lifeline to the world. The key takeaway from day one: flexibility and adaptability. Life without electricity is about more than just survival. It's about adjusting your mindset, your expectations and your habits. It's about being flexible in your approaches and adaptable to new circumstances. So yes, the first day was challenging. I won't sugarcoat it, but it was also enlightening. It forced me to think outside the box, to rely on my skills and resourcefulness. It made me realize just how much we depend on electricity and how much we take it for granted. By the end of the first day, I was starting to understand the gravity of this challenge, but I was also starting to see the potential benefits, the opportunity to learn, to grow, to become more self-reliant, and that, my friends, is what this journey is all about. As the hours turned into days, I faced several challenges. The first and foremost was the absence of heating and cooling. When you're used to flicking a switch for instant comfort, the sudden lack of this luxury is a jarring experience. But this hurdle was surmountable. I found ways to layer clothing for warmth and learned to appreciate the natural ventilation of the house for cooling. Then, there was the issue of preserving food without a refrigerator. This required a bit of creativity and some old-school techniques. I dug into my prepper knowledge and used methods like canning, pickling, and drying to keep my food safe and edible. Another significant challenge was the loss of electronic devices, my phone, my laptop, my TV. I realized how dependent I'd become on digital forms of communication and entertainment. It was isolating and a bit unnerving, but it was also an opportunity. I rediscovered the joy of reading an actual book by candlelight, of writing with pen and paper, and of simply sitting and thinking without the constant interruption of notifications and updates. The biggest challenge, perhaps, was the psychological impact. It was a feeling of being cut off, a sort of digital isolation that's hard to describe. But in this silence, I found a kind of clarity, a return to basics that was both challenging and rewarding. To overcome these challenges, I had to rely on a mix of resourcefulness, creativity, and a good dose of patience. I learned how to use manual tools effectively, how to prepare meals without electricity, and how to ensure safety and hygiene without the usual conveniences. Each challenge was a lesson, each solution a triumph. This journey was not just about surviving without electricity, it was about adapting, learning, and growing. It was about understanding that our modern conveniences are just that, conveniences, not necessities. And in the absence of these conveniences, we can still thrive, not just survive. Now that I've shared my journey, I want to share some tips with you. First off, always start with a well-thought-out plan. It's essential to identify your basic needs and find ways to meet them without relying on electricity. This includes food, water, heating, lighting, and communication. Gather supplies and tools that will help you meet these needs. Remember, it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. Next, consider your daily routine and imagine how it would change without electricity. You might need to cook over a fire, read by candlelight, or find non-electronic forms of entertainment. Think about how you'd preserve your food without a fridge, or how you'd communicate without your digital devices. Getting into this mindset ahead of time can help you adapt more quickly when you're thrown into a no-electricity situation. Third, anticipate the challenges you might face. Living without electricity isn't just about finding alternatives to modern conveniences, it's also about dealing with the psychological impact of being cut off from the digital world. It can be tough, but remember, humans lived without electricity for thousands of years. You're stronger and more adaptable than you think. Now here's a crucial tip. Learn to adapt, improvise, and overcome. The ability to come up with creative solutions to unexpected problems is a key survival skill. Whether it's figuring out how to use manual tools effectively, or finding ways to keep yourself entertained without Netflix, the more adaptable you are, the better. Lastly, reflect on your experiences and learn from them. Every challenge you face is an opportunity to grow and become more resilient. Use these experiences to inform your future preparations and strategies. Remember, preparation is key, and with the right mindset, you can overcome any challenge. So take these tips to heart, stay prepared, and you'll be ready to face whatever comes your way.